Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Ambassador's Lounge's next episode. You heard General Asad Durrani in our earlier episode with Imran Yawar and Ambassador Riaz Bukhari. That was about Iran war, and it was a comprehensive talk, and it clarified many issues which perhaps our audiences may not have. And in this episode, we intend to discuss about Afghanistan. It is an issue which is with us for the past 5 decades. And in fact, my generation grew up with that. And we are now still talking about Afghanistan. Afghanistan, not in terms of friendliness or for that matter, even from cultural point of view. Well, we have commonalities, but we don't see eye to eye with differences. And then recently you saw that there was exchange of fire on both sides of the border. Since 11th October, the border is closed. There is no trade. People cannot come and go. Even now, visas have been stopped. Even medical visas have become a problem. So this is the situation right now. So you can say that we are repeating the periods of 50s and 60s when we were having trouble with Afghanistan and the borders were closed. In one episode in the 60s, it cost Sardar Daud his premiership because of his policies against Pakistan, and especially by raising the bogey of Pashtunistan. However, now this situation is different. There's no issue of Pashtunistan, but at the same time, the Taliban are sheltering the TTP. That is our nemesis number one, and it's causing us problems. And that's the one point which Pakistan has demanded of the Taliban regime to control them. Our priority would be that they hand over the TTP to Pakistan. However, if they invoke the code of Pashtunwali and they don't hand over the Taliban TTP to us, then there are other options. One is to disarm them, and second is to gag their leadership not to do mischiefs against Pakistan. So these are the issues which are already there on the table. We see it on a daily basis. So, and with me now I have Ambassador Saleh Khan. He has been a former DG Afghanistan. He has also a close pulse coming from Balochistan and knowing these issues. So he knows Afghanistan very well. So welcome, sir, again to the program. And
Thank you.
And you are also an older one hand, and you have been dealing it from very close corners. So here, I think we should begin with the situation you read now, and if possibly briefly you can compare it with the evolving situation which has come about with the Taliban movement, and now what are we facing?
The present situation gives me a message that people who are nowadays dealing with Afghanistan, they probably had never dealt with that country before. They had never been probably confronted with all the challenges that Afghanistan posed or the advantages that we've had. And they just disregarded it, and they started dealing with that country just like another one whom we have liberated from some place, and now it has become subservient to us. So this is, I think, a huge mistake that we made. The reasons we'll come to why we do that, why we have done it before, why we do that now. And that is simply because here the decisions are usually taken on these matters, usually, very often, by one man. And that one man may or may not know enough. For example, people like you and me who have been dealt, we knew, even during that struggle, that went on, that whenever we reached that particular point where the Americans are out, the Afghans and the Taliban are on their own, they were not going to do our bidding. The Afghans never do that.
Why, in the first place, we raise these expectations among ourselves that they will do our bidding?
Those who did, all that I can say is that they were on the wrong track. You and I must have known that they would not do it, Tariq also, because this is the history. Actually, the whole thing started not with non-recognition of Pakistan. The entire thing started because they found out that Pakistan was such an important country for them. This was their window to the West. This was a place where they could come, get treated, do trade, find asylum if needed be.
Right.
They knew about it, and that is why I say it's Pakistan that was providing Afghanistan the strategic depth.
Correct.
It's not the other way around.
No.
And if that was so, they protected our flanks both in 65 and 71 war.
Correct.
Because this area is so important for them.
That's true.
The only way we could return the favor was that when they are attacked from outside, Soviets and the Americans, we provide them whatever assistance one could do so that they can get the occupation vacated. Now, this was the quid pro quo that went on, and in that we took lots of risks. The Afghans probably did, I mean, they were under attack, but we also took plenty of risks. The Soviets, when they came in and we decided to, there are people, enough number of people warning us, are you people gone mad? It's another superpower that is sitting there and you are now defying them? People had courage, people had guts. And just before I forget, let me also say that whenever we took these decisions in our own interest, right from 62, reaching out to China till today, and Iran included, recognition of Iran was there. Whenever we decided to take decision on our own, usually against the desires of the United States, we always succeeded.
Correct.
China, we took the Chinese after a few years over the hump.
Yes.
So Afghanistan, one has seen the last 20 years, despite all the pressure, nuclear, one doesn't even have to talk about it.
Absolutely.
But on Iran, something that might have been covered elsewhere also, is that after this revolution, the Americans were our chief patron in Afghanistan against the Soviets. And they said, now that we are working together, would you not like to swear your relationship with Afghanistan? Look at what these people have done, 444 days, hostages, against the norms of diplomat. And that reminded me how Desai once defied the United States pressure to do something so that Pakistan could be scared or deterred from pursuing the nuclear path.
Yeah.
And Desai was, because of you, I'm not going to do it. Pakistan is our neighbor. So this same answer we gave to the Americans. You may have your problem with the Iranians. They are our neighbor. We are not going to do anything that you say.
Correct.
With that type of record, we understood, or we should have understood, that this is something that we can determine on our own.
Correct.
Now, on our own meant that once they are now gone, after that you have to see one thing, and that is now the Afghans, now that they are, they have their country in such a difficult situation. After 40 years of war, they have become now again a country, an independent country. What is it that we should do? Should we now immediately after that burden them with the refugees, couple of millions of refugees at that time? Was that a good time to send them back? I mean, as for the refugees concerned, there is so much else one can say.
Correct.
Why we should not have, but at that time the timing was so bad. And then the most unreasonable demand that I've ever heard is, now you'll round up these TTP chaps and hand them over to us. Physically impossible. We can't do that, we couldn't do that in our own country. With few thousand Baluchis, we could not do that. They are not a herd of animal in which you could do that. In case of Afghans, there is also a special reason for they not obliging us, because the TTP was helpful to them.
Correct.
And so in their tradition, they had to they could not tell the military, now you pack them and go. But they did say something which is very, very reasonable. And they say, once they go, cross their borders, you have such a big army, you are a big power, get hold of them. That's your job then. Get our own people and then deal with them.
So, this statement may not be liked by people here, but I think you have stated the facts, and you have also set the tone, and especially when we have taken decisions in our own interests, national interests, those have survived, like the Chinese, our relationship with China, our nuclear program, and then on Afghanistan, we took the decision.
General Sahab, we all know that Afghanistan is the most read, most analyzed, and most mishandled subject, not only in Pakistan, but I think all over the world. What I think that the Pakistan-Afghanistan crisis is driven by three issues, precisely. The one, Durrani Line border dispute between the two countries. Some say it is not an issue at all, but it is there and it is still there. Second is the Taliban TTP ideological and operational links. And third is the long-standing strategic mistrust. My question is that while we are analyzing the subject of Afghanistan so deeply, we understand, we have the blood relations with the Afghan people. We know everything and they know everything about us. What is the hurdle that we have not been able to resolve issues with Afghanistan? Keeping these three, main, points which I have just mentioned. So I would like to listen to you.
Probably, very, very tall order to address all these questions. And people like me who got involved sometimes, start thinking about these things from the other point of view. That is the intelligence first principle. If you want to know what the Afghans are doing, were going to do, or what the Indians will do, put them yourself in their shoes and say, what is it that one would do? But your first point about, Afghanistan being such an important country, I think it will, I may start by just building down the importance that Pakistan attributes to itself. Almost every time one was abroad, and I was only, in Germany a couple of times, I found their interest in Afghanistan was much more than in Pakistan. And if at all they took interest or they talked to us, was also in context of Afghanistan. You are helping now the Afghan resistance against the Soviets, so Pakistanis are good friends. Once it has happened, then after that the interest is gone. That means Afghanistan has something special that the other countries do not have. Just that much. But now coming to the nitty-gritty of borders. You see, Durrani Line or Pakistan border, was it such a big deal? The Afghans, for all these periods, before we started raising this point time and again, they were, honoring this line as an international border, except that they did not recognize it. They did it on your front. We did whatever had to be done on our front. The areas that are straddling, or the communities that are straddling the borders, they continue to move to and fro. But it did not happen that this line was violated because they had not observed it, or we insist that you observe it. We at some stage started raising this point. When the rest of the world, Europe, etc., is thinking about being borderless, we wanted to do that. The wisdom of raising Durrani Line on such critical times when the war is going on against the Soviets or against the Americans, I never understood why. In due course of time, we'll find out what is the best solution, even if they don't recognize it, like we don't recognize the ceasefire line in Kashmir. We have our own. But most of the time, we have observed it as it is. as something that has to be under the normal circumstances observed. So that is one. The second is, how come that people here misread Afghanistan? I don't blame them, because it's not easy. The best of the experts, when they get involved with them, every time they find out there was some factor that they were missing. And so we were struggling through, understanding them, or muddling through would be probably the better word, as to how to deal with them. And in that, one came across a couple of realities. We may have to suffer the idiosyncrasies of the tribesmen. They don't behave like any normal citizens that we wanted them to do. People in Kabul had a different outlook, but the tribal areas had a different one. The tribesmen, they're different. Understanding that is already a big problem. Once you find out that now that the resistance is primarily being waged by the tribesmen against the wishes of, let's say, the North or people in Kabul, how do you reconcile that? We came under fire, we took plenty of flack on that account. For 20 years, we were being hated by the regimes in Kabul or people in Kabul. But we stuck to those lines. The only surprising thing, or let's say that the thing that took the wrong turn was that after the Soviets are out, the Americans are out, now there is a country itself. And we suddenly came to the conclusion that they would do what we want them. Now, this is a very old principle that one learned somewhere down the line, that even if you try to push Afghans into heaven, he will not oblige. But you can lure him into hell. Now, this is a saying that I heard many times. Yeah. That clearly meant no pressure. Don't exercise, not the refugee pressure, not the bombardment pressure. As far as the kinetic means to resolve this problem is concerned, hasn't one learned from the history generally, but also in Afghanistan, that it has never worked? When was it last that we, on fighting insurgencies or fighting others, merely by the use of force could clinch an issue? At best, it was always a combination, what in military terminology calls maneuver and battle. That means, essentially, it is the maneuver. You do something so that you are positioned well. Battle is only to create another favorable position for the next maneuver. In case of Afghanistan, one would have said, we exercise some sort of a force in being, but the actual thing is to be done by non-kinetic means. Now, this is the way one had to go with the Afghans to get to the point where the TTP gets neutralized, gets extradited, and once it comes here, again, I was not the one who is going to ever favor that once they are here, we should do the same thing to them which we have tried to do with Baloch, with other insurgencies. Because the insurgencies, we learned that. Some of us learned that after 71. Because Bangladesh war was a failed counterinsurgency. And that is when we started seriously learning about insurgency and came to the conclusion, it's not a military affair. It's not a law and order affair. The first place is a political thing. So the politics should lead and then find out if the military at some side is necessary, let's say, to win them a little more time or to provide them space. But in our case, almost every time, the counterinsurgency operation starts with the bombardment, with military actions. And it always had to fail. Nowhere has it succeeded.
Correct.
So if we haven't learned those lessons, learning how to deal with Afghanistan does not then surprise me that we did not deal with
Don't you think, sir, we have made our life miserable because of our own misunderstanding?
Absolutely. True.
And
even TTP,
you just talked about Balochistan, that is insurgency after the East Pakistan debacle. While there was no need to go for the military operation in Balochistan,
True.
In fact, we revived those insurgents,
Yep.
and since then,
True.
there has only been small patches of lull. Otherwise, you have seen in Balochistan the trouble. And our successive governments failed to realize that there's always a way of handling things politically.
Absolutely right. You see, we're talking about Bangladesh from this, the whole thing, learning process I started. And we were asked to do it. I was somewhere in Azad Kashmir, not really, because of any insurgencies around. But our seniors, our commanders were very sensible and they said, let's start studying this affair. Sardar Yaqub had already said before the military action, don't take military action in Pakistan. That period, it will not help. He was sacked. So similarly, wherever else people talk about, now that there are people who are angry with us, why don't we try the other one? And they say, but they won't talk. You see, we have gone ahead for 60, 70 years doing the kinetic without any result, but we don't want to talk them for 60 months or 60 weeks. Oh, but we made an effort and it failed. Oh, no, the talking process is actually such a long and it requires so much of patience that you ultimately will find out that because of this 5 or 10% of the insurgents have TTP incidentally was not a monolith. It had 40 groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some people would have come around, the others would not. Some will have to be eliminated, the others bribed. Now that is what counterinsurgency.
And this is what their intention is actually. Those groups, they want to be listened to, or for that matter, to be bribed.
Yeah.
If one can use the crude language.
Absolutely right. So that patience one does not.
General Sahab, you have mentioned that political solution is the only viable solution between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
True.
Under the current situation, what do you think? Which political leadership should talk to the Afghans? Who are the competent one who have trust, with the Afghan Talibans?
This is again a very key question. Certainly not the military. The military does not know how to negotiate. We sent on a couple of rounds only the military people, and I said, well, this was never our job. Will we have the patience to talk to the Taliban, to the Afghans, and survive that particular process? But as far as the policy or the politician here in place, if they have to talk, they probably will also make a mess of it. The old system, which is probably the tried system anywhere, but especially among the tribal societies, is get hold of 5 or 10 people who have credibility with the Afghans and we can also trust them. They will start the process. They will start slowly and gradually and say, well, this is what is achievable now, and this will be the next phase, and the whole process will last, well, I suppose a couple of years before we come to that conclusion. But the people who will lead the dialogue have to be one who can empathize with the Afghans. This is the old principle. I mean, the principle that I learned from them was, you only have to walk up to your rival's door, and after that, half the battle is won, because you've gone to them and says, we want to talk. You are a tribal chief, the other one was also a big man. That is how it is. But you don't go and say, if you don't, then here is the gun, we will make you listen to us.
That will not
Here, I invite your attention to that Mullah Heptullah, no one has seen him in public. Except for the Qatari Prime Minister, I think no one in Pakistan, perhaps they say Maulana Fazlur Rahman also, he saw him. But at the governmental level, no one has seen him. I don't know what was the failure, or we didn't make an attempt to call on him, meet him, or they are shy of meeting our leadership. Our leadership did not take the initiative. And if the issue was only TTP, and as you have rightly pointed out, that only kinetic methods would not work. And here we also have a bulk of TTP in our former FATA areas. I have a slightly different question that do you think that merging FATA into KP was a mistake? Because the tribal system under which the FATA worked and the so-called FCR, which was much maligned FCR, but the former bureaucrats who have been dealing as political agents in the former FATA, they said that it was almost closer to the American system. And they have the jury and they decide about that. And then most of the time it was in 2 hearings or maximum 3rd hearing, they would decide about a case.
Yeah.
Now, since 2018 that districts have been merged, not a single murder case has been resolved till date. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it was promised after the amendment in the Constitution in 2018 that for another 10 years, FATA's development would be given a priority, an allocation of 1 trillion rupees, i.e. 100 billion per annum would be given. Till 2024, only 72 billion rupees were spent. The rest is nothing. And more importantly, there is abject poverty. People are unemployed. Mm-hmm. So they are very much available to the TTP guys to work because for them it's a job. It is nothing else because as far as ideology is concerned, TTP has failed to build up its narrative. And it is the government's failure to counter that narrative also, that faulty narrative. And it is, they want to bring in so-called Islamic system in a country where they themselves don't know that the Constitution is Islamic and they cannot pinpoint a single clause in the Constitution which they think is un-Islamic. With these contradictions in TTP's working, their modus operandi, we have failed. The governments have failed. In such a scenario, just thumping the blame on the Afghan Taliban, do you think it is justified?
No, it is not. I mean, it's for so many reasons one would say that we have been following a flawed strategy on all these subjects. Right from the beginning, there's a common thread that can be woven through all our efforts in this direction. Swat, very well run state, merged and it becomes as corrupt as the others. Bahawalpur state was very highly educated and their system was probably the best in the country. You bring it in the mainstream of Punjab and after that see what happened. Balochistan we have already talked about. In case of FATA, there were enough number of people. I was one of the smaller voices that says don't do it. The merger must take place after a long time and then have enough number of people from there, the genuine so-called representatives involved, and then do it over a period of time. We just learned over a period of time that we must, from one day to the other, force a new system down people's throat. Devolution, 14th of August 2002. Absolutely, unprepared grounds. And there we wanted the devolution to take place. Country runs centrally or by central direction. Some people taking a decision without giving a pause that now if we are to make these people responsible for their own decisions, then let's also train them in this particular way. So it is a jhatka that we carry out, and after that the results are out. In this particular case, it was so unforgivable, except for one thing. The man who was in the forefront, Khalid, is a very good old friend. He was asked, he was begged because he was also talking to me for a very different reason. I said, don't do it. Why must we do it? Similarly, in devolution, Tanveer Naqvi used to be talked about that don't do this thing now in this manner. It will not happen. But then people have, their own views, and they think that if something shock and awe, if you say, after that things are going to be all right. Otherwise, we will implement it by one way or the other. Never worked. In case of Hata, it was not going to work. But we did it, never consulting the people involved, the concerned people who have stakes. We usually don't take them into account.
But they say there's an overwhelming view in the FATA region that people wanted this FCR to be done away with.
Yeah, true.
And similarly, they wanted to merge with KP.
True.
But we have got the results in front of us.
I do not know how many people wanted that. This did not look very well, this FCR business. FCR could be taken away without, doing anything else gradually, because as far as the FCR was concerned, during all those 60, 70 years, the crime rate in FATA was the lowest in the country.
Correct.
People there in FATA had the same opportunities as we had, and they came, joined the armed forces, civil services, businesses. They did better than the ratio of the population. So they were all right. If there was a reform to be done, it has to be. I mean, this is the old principle. You do it very gradually, take people in confidence, do a couple of pioneer or the pilot projects to see if it will work in a new environment or not. We haven't done it. So the net answer is that whatever is happening now, it does not surprise me at all. It had to happen. People were warned that it will happen.
So, but if I can, now there are discussions and there are analyses that perhaps the Taliban regime has shot in its foot by annoying Pakistan. And now they are isolated almost, because except for Russia, which has recognized Taliban, no one has recognized the regime. One. Secondly, even Russia recently, their foreign office and as well as foreign minister, they have made complaints about Taliban's failure to control these terrorist groups. And there have been a series of incidents which have been taking place. And Taliban are in a denial mode. So it is just not that Pakistan may have taken certain harsh measures against them just to make them realize, which I doubt that they will realize. But at the same time, they are also a hard nut to crack. And they are actually not only a problem for Pakistan. They are a problem for the entire immediate neighborhood of Afghanistan and beyond, if they don't come out of the denial mode. So how you look at it?
Something that I might not know fully, how isolated they are. Because, if one goes with another set of narratives, they are being wooed by everyone. Now that is also something ahead. The Chinese investments, the Russians, of course, Iranians' pragmatism, India, before we forget.
But India has jumped in because we are annoyed.
I'm sure all of us knew that once they become independent, they are going to. India will reach out to them because India has an old history of, doing such circus acts. And so within a year they were there. Now this is one set of narratives that they are being wooed and they will be able to probably do not as badly as we fear that they would. But Asad, the actual thing is that for us, many other things may or may not matter. But the regional, the some sort of a regional amity, some sort of a consensus of the region, that was more important. We have a problem in the east. We have now a war on the western border, the Iranian borders, and in between we also have created another front which seemed unnecessary, which if there's a minimum had to be kept quiet so that we can get rid of few things.
So we are in a nutcracker?
That was precisely the term used when we first tried to give some sort of a assistance to the Afghan resistance after the Soviets. And someone says, why are you doing it? And the answer was simple. Soviet Union and India friendly superpower. If it is on the western borders, India in the east, Pakistan would have fallen into the house of a nutcracker. That's the first time when I heard that. Now, it may or may not sound that bad because I don't think the Afghans will do anything, my assessment, which will be harmful to their interest and our interest. They will create everything else, they will not oblige you on certain things, but will not do anything at this time, not the Taliban,
Correct.
not the Afghans, that will be, let's say, of fatal value to us.
How much is the possibility of regime change in Afghanistan?
For the time being, it doesn't look possible. It doesn't look very likely. Not that they are there forever, because the Taliban also not a very natural Afghanistan construct. They do not act as the normal Afghans should do. It's a very decentralized, polity. They are trying to rule from Afghanistan was bad enough. From Kabul was bad enough. It's being done from Kandahar now. So the Kandaharis and the
But it is highly centralized.
Kandaharis and Kabalis also have a problem. But considering what they have achieved so far, especially during the resistance, the way they have spread the tentacles, even in the north, I don't foresee that happening very good. Of course, they are not going to be forever. No doubt about that.
Agree.
It is a highly centralized system because
Yeah.
the Taliban would not, on the table, they would not agree on anything because they did not have the mandate or power to negotiate. Because when you go on when you have bilateral talks, you in fact have some mandate that will discuss these issues and this would be our strategy and all that. And then if comes closer to that, you do agree at referendum. And this is what the normal course of action is. But Taliban would not come to that. Not even during those talks in Doha or in Istanbul. They were non-committal, totally non-committal. And then even when they, in May 2023, the trilateral foreign minister meeting between Pakistan, China and Afghanistan took place in Islamabad. The joint statements talked about that Afghanistan would be taking action against TTP and ETIM. It's an agreed language. And when in August 2025, that trilateral meeting took place in Kabul, the foreign ministers meeting, Afghans had reneged from that agreed language also. So from diplomatic point of view, from professional point of view, it was such a bizarre situation for China and Pakistan, what to do. So they, even on written, agreement in the joint statement, they would just back out.
I was talking to some of your colleagues outside when we went out for a smoke. Agreements are always for the birds. I've never found any agreement being implemented anywhere. Unless both of them have mutual interest, like the water treaty, etc., after a certain time. Otherwise, the agreement is done mostly to be violated. And this again, I think Little Heart's famous book, We Don't Learn from History or something, in which it says, an agreement is there till it serves the purpose of one or the other. Otherwise, it does not.
But sir, here, this was not an issue that, in fact, that dented their credibility as a stakeholder, as a partner.
The Afghans, if whatever one has known, they can go and make a promise in the holiest of Islamic places, Kaaba, and they observe them only as long as they are on the Holy Land. Back home, it's business as usual.
You have hit the nail in the head. I'll borrow the term.
General Sahab, how much is the possibility of division of Afghanistan? How much possibility? And are you seeing in foreseeable future or in a distant future?
You see, during this last 30, 40 years, while dealing with Afghanistan, one tried to, make an assessment as to how well knit is the Afghan nation. For example, one would ask people in the north, you could not be comfortable with these illiterate Pashtuns. You have that enlightenment, you have also resources, it's also a richer area. Would you not like to, create some sort of an entity for yourself? And they said, no, we have our differences, but this is our country. With the Pashtuns also we threw some, a bait. Come on, you are only half of our, the Pashtuns that we have. And we may not be a terribly rich country, but even then, it's a little better than what your experience is. Can't we join them? Can't you like Pashtunistan that you say, Pashtunistan is part of Pakistan? They would come for your throat and says, don't you ever talk about us betraying our nationalism. So that is how strongly knit was the agreement that was stuck in 1747 that gave rise to the Republic or the country of Afghanistan. And since it has stood them in good stead in various crises, they have somehow or other believed that together, regardless of their problems, they like to do it. But that still does not mean that nothing can happen.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Despite challenges, I think Afghanistan has been there, and they have been fighting with each other, and still that country is not stable enough. They have their enemies, they have not secure borders, they have almost over 24 terrorist groups inside that country, as acknowledged by the United Nations Security Council latest report. And they are in a denial mode. That is also a fact of life. And they think that they are the center of the universe because the system they have introduced, they call it Islam. It's Islam which has just cut off the women folk. They have no equal rights, and which the world knows, and which is the prime reason of not recognizing the Taliban regime. And despite all these facts, but Afghanistan is the reality. For us, it is not the Taliban regime or any other. It is the 2,620 kilometer border, which we have to look at it. And General Saab mentioned about this Durrani line. One thing which I stand corrected, but one thing which I saw that Afghanistan never officially raised the issue of Durrani line with Pakistan in official talks. And then in our whatever agreements we had, it was not Durrani line, it was international boundary, the word was used in different agreements between the two countries. So there are certain misreadings and misperceptions about this so-called Durrani line. And now Taliban are raising it. They call it Karkh-e-Farzi, imaginary line. But they also know that they cannot violate the international border, the boundary, or Durrani line. They cannot. So there are red lines which are very much there. They cannot cross it. Of course, the TTP is an issue which we have to tackle within our own borders, but also we will be seeking assistance of Taliban regime if they really mean business. Otherwise, these tensions would continue. And it is harmful. It is harmful for Afghanistan, rather harmful, more harmful for Afghanistan than Pakistan. And I hope that the good sense would prevail, and Afghan side, Taliban side would also look into that. And then, yes, as General Asad Durrani pointed out, there have been a system of jirga. Afghanistan is by and large a tribal society, by and large. Especially the people who are living along Pakistan-Afghanistan border. For them, this is the language they understand easily, and they can implement it. So I think we already have tools in place, provided we ourselves, those who wield power in Pakistan, they also understand those tools and how to use them. Once they make themselves abreast of those tools, and they will find it much easier in negotiating with the tribal people. You may not take out tribal man from the Taliban. They may perhaps talk about Islam, religion, whatever they want to project about themselves. But inside every Afghan, there's a tribal man. And you have to address those sensibilities. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Please subscribe to our channel. Take care. Thank you.